Hello everyone, and welcome back to this new part of the project Our World. So now that we've talked about all the basics concepts to have in mind when creating a scene, meaning the shapes, the color, the lighting, and also the composition, I'm just gonna start with a 3D blockout, which is like a rough 3D thing, of what we covered last time in the composition lesson. So I'm starting now with the scene that you should have by now as well. Okay, it's a simple scene with a 3D viewport, a material editor, just in case, and just above what the camera sees. Okay, you can also see that the camera is animated, and I'm just gonna stop it at frame 60. I'm gonna delete everything I don't need in the scene, and there is something I also want you to be aware of, is this. This is called the DOF ref, like DOF, D-O-F, like depth of field, and the camera is already set to have it taken into account, and then you can modify later on the parameters. It will just allow you to add more or less blur or focus into an area of your image. So now, what I'm gonna do, remember, the basic concept was a character reaching out for a hamburger on a table. So what I'm just doing is creating with very simple objects all the basic elements I need for this scene. The total recording time of everything I did today was about 1 hour and 30, so I'm just gonna speed up a few of the process. Okay, you've already seen me modeling objects in the Alchemist Workshop playlist, or even in the previous one, the MUS episode 1. Okay, so this is just on my table. I've hidden everything else so that I can only concentrate on the set for the moment. Here you go. This is my version of a really simple hamburger on top of a plate, and as you can see, I'm just using a cylinder with a few extrudes and a few bevels. Okay, nothing very fancy. And this is a double hamburger with just 2 pieces of meat, and let's say this could be the cheese. Okay, now I'm just calculating the potential height of a human mannequin set to about 7 size of head. Okay, now let's start with a simple head, and I'm just gonna build a simple mannequin with simple objects. You can see it's just cylinders, spheres, and cubes. Okay. Next thing I'm just gonna do is to parent every single object so that if I move, let's say, the hip, all the mannequin will move with it. It's gonna be easier. This is just a really basic setup, but keep in mind that we are gonna cover armatures and animation later on in this project, so maybe you can wait until then to do something more complicated. This is just for the blockout, so it doesn't need to be complicated and take a lot of time. Okay, so now that our mannequin is done, I'm setting up now the scene compared to the camera to make sure everything's working well. Okay, and that it respects the rule of thirds, like we did in the composition. So now I'm posing the character, as you can see, just leaning forward to reach out for the hamburger, and it's time to add the little few furniture and other elements we had in the blockout. Okay, so there was a couch and a TV on top of some kind of shelf. I added some legs because I like things with legs. Okay, and then of course the shelf on the corner. Okay, now it's time to add the foreground. Okay, remember the 3 planes, the foreground, middle ground, and the background. We did the middle ground and the background. We are in the living room, but it can be like a studio with an open kitchen. Okay, so added what could be like a countertop and some few elements, just rough things like that, classes that I'm positioning so that the animation can be read easily. And lastly, I'm adding a kind of box to act as walls for this scene. Okay, I'm extruding a few things, cutting here and there to add the window. And for the sake of demonstration, I'm adding lights already, but that's gonna be parts of another lesson. Okay, so I've added the light for the TV, some close to the hamburger to make it pop. Okay, and after I've set up the EV parameters, I'm setting up also something for the lights, and I'm adding some materials for some elements to have like something in the window and as well on the TV. Okay, so I think the scene is finished, and now it's time to work on something else. I'm gonna do a second demonstration based on what my students wanted. They kinda like things that are sci-fi, so I'm gonna start with something similar. Okay, so if we think about it in terms of shape, what makes something look sci-fi? This is gonna be an interior. You can see I've already started with an hexagon, and I'm drawing like a curve. If you add an array modifier to an element and then a curve modifier, you will see that your object will follow the curve. And if you cut your object, you will just follow it with a much smoother curvature. But I don't want that, so I'm just gonna remove these cuts. And then I think what makes a corridor a sci-fi corridor are the pillars that you can regularly see along the corridor. So this looks to me more like a sci-fi corridor. I'm gonna add something looking like cables, okay, to add a bit of details. And now what I'd like to do is having also corridors going from left to right. I'm gonna add a few objects to make the connections between all the corridors. It's very, very rough. And now I have what I wanted. Something I'm gonna do to save time is to copy my mannequin over to the new scene, and then oops. Okay, I wanted to reset the rotation, but I think I just messed up with it before the parenting, so this is what it looked like when I set the rotation to 0. So that's not good. Okay, so I just decided to do it all by hand. You know how I like to do drawing things by hand. So let's do it. It didn't take too long. Okay, and now I have my mannequin ready for this scene. I'm gonna just add a new element to it. I'm adding a helmet on one side, and on the other side some kind of breathing device. Maybe you recognize the style of it, I'm not sure. That's gonna be a surprise. Okay, so now time to pose the characters, okay, to verify how we see them in the scene. And of course, this is like an army of bad guys, with some other guys in the foreground who try to ambush them. Next, another guy on the right hand side, of course. And I'm just adding a few elements. Those guys will be armed, so I'm gonna model and give them some weapons, as well as the people in the foreground. And because I didn't want to spoil it, here is the final result of this scene. I mean, the final result. An overview of this scene. Okay, this is what it looks like. I'll let you appreciate it. Okay, it's not long, of course, that's the goal of it. I don't want to overwhelm you with something too long to do. And as you can see, okay, first you start with the guys that are doing the ambush. Okay, you can see them like that, and they all point towards the right side, so you want to look at the right side even more. Then you see the army, the troops, okay, there, it's concentrated on them, but at the end you can see a bit of what's coming, and if you know the reference, a lot of people do, you think that's gonna be kinda hard for the rebels to fight these fights. But then, of course, there is an inch of hope with the guy at the end. You might have recognized a good guy, a Jedi, holding a lightsaber. Okay, so that was the 3D blockout for me. I hope you appreciate what you saw and that you understood what it means to do the 3D blockout. It's not supposed to be complicated things, but again, focusing on shapes, as long as you understood, like in the first scene, that it was a hamburger and a man reaching out to it, you don't need any more elements. And again, for the second part, it's still a blockout, but I hope you understand what I wanted to do in this scene. So, I wish you good luck for your projects, and I hope you're doing well. I wish you, as usual, a great week, a great life, and of course I'll see you next time for something a bit more refined. Take care everyone, bye.